Rich Dad Poor Dad is the best-selling personal finance book of all time, with over 40 million copies sold. And I'm about to break down the 3 core lessons that every beginner needs to understand about money. Now look, I know that some of the advice in the book are considered questionable or dated by some people. In addition, Robert Kiyosaki has also been involved in some controversies. But here's why I still think everyone starting their wealth journey should read this book. The fundamental concepts are bulletproof. The difference between assets and liabilities, building passive income, changing your money mindset. These aren't just theories. They're the foundation of every wealthy person's thinking. And with most people still trading time for money, while inflation eats their savings, these basic concepts aren't just helpful, they're essential. So I'm going to walk you through the lessons that actually matter, separate the gold from the controversy, and show you why 40 million people didn't just buy this book. Many of them transformed their lives with it. And why it's still the #1 book I recommend to anyone starting their wealth journey in 2025. Here's the first mind-blowing lesson from Rich Dad Poor Dad. The rich don't work for money. I know that sounds crazy. If they don't work for money, how did they get rich in the first place? When Robert Kiyosaki was just 9 years old, he and his friend Mike wanted to make money. So they did what any enterprising kids would do. They literally tried to make money by melting down lead toothpaste tubes and creating counterfeit nickels. After Robert's dad explained why this was illegal, he suggested they talk to Mike's dad about making money the right way. And that's when their financial education really began. Mike's dad, the rich dad, made them work in his store for 10 cents an hour. But here's where it gets interesting. After a few weeks, when Robert complained about the low pay, Rich Dad taught him the most important lesson. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Let me break this down with a 2025 example. Imagine 2 people. Person A works a 9-to-5 job, gets paid $5,000 a month, pays bills, saves what's left, if anything. They're constantly trading time for money. If they stop working, the money stops. Person B builds a YouTube channel, creates online courses, invests in dividend stocks, or owns rental properties. They might work hard initially, but eventually, these assets generate money whether they're working or sleeping. That's the difference. Person A works for money. Person B makes money work for them. I mean, which person sounds more like you right now? Let me know in the comments. Are you person A or person B? No judgment here. We all start somewhere. Rich Dad explained that most people are controlled by 2 emotions when it comes to money: fear and greed. Fear of not having enough money makes them get a job. Once they get paid, greed kicks in. They want more things. So they work harder, earn more, spend more, and get trapped in what he called the rat race. It's like being on a hamster wheel, running faster and faster, but never actually getting anywhere. The lesson isn't don't get a job. It's about changing your mindset. Instead of thinking, I need a raise, or I need to work overtime, or I need a second job, start thinking, how can I create assets? And how can I make money work for me? And how can I generate income that doesn't require my constant time? Here are modern examples of money working for you. Digital products like ebooks, courses, and templates that you create once and sell forever. Investment income from dividends, interest, and capital gains. Online businesses with automated systems that generate revenue 24/7. Intellectual property that produces royalties from creative work. Real estate providing rental income from properties. This first lesson is the foundation of everything else in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Until you understand that you need to shift from working for money to having money work for you, you'll stay trapped in the rat race. This next lesson is probably the most important financial concept you'll ever learn, and it's shockingly simple. Yet most people, including many who think they're financially savvy, get it completely wrong. Rich Dad taught Robert that there's only one rule to getting rich. Know the difference between an asset and a liability, and buy assets. That's it. Sounds too simple, right? But here's the problem. Most people think they know what assets are, but they're dead wrong. Let me give you Rich Dad's definition. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's it. Forget what your accountant says. Forget complex definitions. If something brings money into your pocket regularly, it's an asset. If it takes money out, it's a liability. Now here's where it gets controversial, and this made Robert's highly educated poor dad furious. Your house is not an asset. I know. Everyone says your home is your biggest asset. But think about it using Rich Dad's definition. Does your house put money in your pocket each month? No. It takes money out through mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. Even if you own it outright, it's still costing you money every month. That makes it a liability. Let me show you the difference with real examples. What most people think are assets, but are actually liabilities, include your personal house that costs you money monthly, your car with depreciation, insurance, gas, and maintenance, that boat you use twice a year, expensive gadgets and electronics, and designer clothes and jewelry. What actual assets look like are rental properties where tenants pay you monthly, dividend-paying stocks with quarterly payments, a business that runs without you and generates profit, intellectual property with royalties from books, courses, or music, and bonds or peer-to-peer lending that provide interest payments. Here's the cash flow pattern that shows why most people struggle. Poor and middle class. Earn money. Pay expenses. Whatever's left, usually nothing. Buy liabilities thinking they're assets. Need more money. Work harder. The rich. Earn money. Buy assets. Assets generate income. Use that income to buy more assets. Assets buy their luxuries. The middle class gets trapped because they buy liabilities believing they're assets. They buy a bigger house thinking it's an investment. They lease a luxury car because they deserve it. They max out credit cards on things that lose value immediately. Meanwhile, the rich focus on filling what Kiyosaki calls their asset column. Every dollar they can, they put into things that will generate more dollars. Here's an interesting example from the book. If you want a luxury car, don't buy it with your salary. First, buy assets. Then let those assets generate enough cash flow to pay for the car. That way, you get the car, and you still have the assets. Let me give you a 2025 example. Instead of buying a $50,000 Tesla with your savings, invest that $50,000 in dividend stocks yielding 5% for $2,500 per year. Or buy a small rental property generating $500 per month for $6,000 per year. Or create an online business selling digital products. Let those assets pay for your car lease. The crazy part? Most people will never do this. They'll say, I can afford the payment, and buy the car directly, missing the chance to build wealth. This is why the rich get richer. They understand this simple concept and live by it religiously. Every purchase decision goes through this filter. Is this an asset or a liability? Here's a question that might sting a little. Whose business are you minding right now? If you're like most people, you're minding everyone's business except your own. You're making your boss rich, making the bank rich through your mortgage, making the government rich through taxes. But what about your business? Rich Dad taught Robert a critical distinction. Your profession is not your business. Let me explain with a story from the book. Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, once asked a group of MBA students, "What business am I in?" They laughed and said, "You're in the hamburger business." Ray smiled and said, "No, I'm in the real estate business." McDonald's makes money from hamburgers, but Ray Kroc's real business was accumulating prime real estate locations around the world. Today, McDonald's is one of the largest real estate holders on the planet. The hamburgers just pay for the real estate. This is what Rich Dad meant by mind your own business. Your profession might be what pays the bills, but your business is your asset column. Here's the problem most people face. They work for someone else's company, making the owner rich. They pay the government first through taxes. They pay the bank through their mortgage and loans. By the time they pay themselves, there's nothing left. Rich Dad's advice was revolutionary. Keep your day job, but start minding your own business. Your business is not your profession. Your business is your asset column. While you're working your 9 to 5, you should be building your assets on the side. Let me give you modern examples of people minding their own business. The software engineer who works at Google by day as their profession builds and sells WordPress plugins at night as their business and uses that income to buy rental properties as assets. The nurse who works hospital shifts as their profession, creates online courses for nursing students as their business, and invests profits in dividend stocks as assets. The accountant who works at a firm as their profession, buys and flips items on eBay as their business, and reinvests profits into peer-to-peer lending as assets. Notice the pattern? They didn't quit their jobs. They used their steady income to fund their asset building. So here's my question for you. What's one asset you could start building this month while keeping your day job? Seriously, pause and think about it. What skills do you have that others would pay for? Rich Dad said most people work their entire lives minding someone else's business and making that person rich. At the end of their career, they have nothing to show for it except maybe a gold watch and a pension that might not even be there. Here's what minding your own business means in practical terms. Stop buying liabilities and no more unnecessary consumer debt. Start acquiring assets even if you start small. Keep expenses low and live below your means while building. Focus on assets you understand and love, whether that's real estate, stocks, businesses, or intellectual property. The key insight: you don't need to quit your job to start building wealth. In fact, Rich Dad recommended keeping your job while you build your asset base, your salary funds, your asset purchases. But here's what most people do wrong. They get a raise and immediately increase their lifestyle. Bigger house, newer car, fancier vacations. Their expenses rise with their income, so they never get ahead. The rich do the opposite. They get a raise and buy more assets. They keep their expenses flat while their asset column grows. Eventually, their assets generate enough income to cover their expenses. That's when they're truly free. Kiyosaki shares that he focused on two main asset classes: real estate for steady cash flow and small company stocks for rapid growth. But he emphasizes you should focus on assets you understand and are passionate about. If you hate real estate, don't force it. Maybe your thing is online businesses, cryptocurrency, intellectual property, commodity trading, or collectibles that appreciate. The specific assets don't matter as much as the habit of building your asset column. Here's the brutal truth. If you don't mind your own business, you'll spend your best years making someone else rich, only to reach retirement with little to show for it. You'll be dependent on a company pension, Social Security, or your kids. But if you start minding your own business today, even while keeping your day job, you can build an asset column that eventually buys your freedom. So there you have it, the three most fundamental lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad that can completely transform your financial life. First, the rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. Stop thinking about how to earn more and start thinking about how to create systems that generate income without your constant presence. Second, know the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes it out. Your house, your car, that expensive gadget. If it's not generating income, it's probably a liability. Focus on buying real assets. Third, mind your own business. Your job is your profession, but your asset column is your business. Keep your day job while you build assets on the side. Don't wait. Start building your asset column today, even if it's small. Look, I know this might feel overwhelming, but here's the thing. You don't need to do everything at once. Pick one action from these lessons and start this week. Identify one liability in your life that you thought was an asset. Start tracking your cash flow. Where is money really going? Choose one type of asset to learn about: stocks, real estate, online business. Set aside even $100 this month specifically for buying an asset. Remember, Rich Dad, Poor Dad has sold 40 million copies because these principles work. But they only work if you actually apply them. Knowledge without action is worthless. If you want to dive deeper into these concepts, I recommend actually reading the full book. There's so much more we couldn't cover in this video. And if you're serious about transforming your financial life, make sure to subscribe because I'll be breaking down more wealth building strategies that actually work. If this video opened your eyes to a new way of thinking about money, you'll love my video on the psychology of money, where I break down why most people struggle with money even when they know what to do. The choice is yours, but whatever you do, don't just watch. Take action. Your future wealthy self will thank you. See you in the next one.